You may be seated. Before we begin, we ask for those that have a cell phone or pager, if you could turn it to the silent mode. Officiating is Rabbi Melvin Pickles.
Asher Ya'ish Asher lo halach b'atzas hashoim uv'derech chatoim lo amad uv'moshav leitzim lo yoshav ki im besor asa Adonai chefzo uv'besor asa yehegei yomam v'layla v'haya ke'etz shasul al palgi mayim asher piryo yitein b'ito v'alehu lo yibol וכל אשר יעשה יצליח. לא כן הרשעים כי אם כמוץ אשר תדפן הרוח, על כן לא יקומו רשעים במשפט וחטאים ועדת צדיקים, כי יודע אדוני דרך צדיקים ודרך רשעים תאבד. Here to give the kavod achron to my shver, Moshe Chaim ben Yocham Fischel. As I was thinking about what to say about him, I realized how many people in the Chicago community, he was the one to stand up here and give divrei hesped for them, and how much comfort he gave to so many people in the community. And this is our opportunity to say shavach about Mashver Israel.
Thank you all for coming. How do I write what my father meant to me in a few hours? I can't, so I won't. Many of you knew my father. Many of you did not. Those of you who did usually responded when I told you my name for the first time. You're Mel's son. He's the nicest man. How can I sum up my father in a few paragraphs or sentences or words? I can't. So I won't. The Parsha of Vayikra, Hashem called Moshe. My father was also Moshe. Also had a calling. He was not an award-winning insurance salesman, like his plaque said in his basement. He was not a vending machine operator. I remember going with him for hours in a car ride in his giant blue truck. I remember him bringing my 6th grade class for a birthday party in his warehouse, where they fixed the machines, and we played until I got a migraine. My father was a rabbi. He was a chaplain. He gave comfort, and he helped people in the hardest times of their lives. That was his calling. He was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he made his trip to Skokie, Illinois. I followed in his footsteps. My father loved learning. The day he had a stroke, right before, that's what he was doing. He was learning. For many years, he got up extraordinarily early in the morning to open up the shul. I can still remember the smell of the coffee. It was extraordinarily strong. He was the nicest man. And he taught me that everyone, no matter what you look like, no matter how much money you've made, they mattered. They were worth something. And I took that Midwestern, Tulsa, Oklahoma mentality from West Rogers Park to Skokie as well. How can we forget such a man? We can't, so we won't.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. I'd like to say a few words about my grandfather. My grandfather, we call him Zadie, had so many wonderful qualities, one of which was a deep love of Torah. He always made learning such a fun experience for me, my brother, and our cousins. He always loved to make people smile. He was a great rabbi and candyman at his shul, and snuck jokes into conversations wherever he could. He was so happy and spirited all day, every day. Even though this is a very sad occasion, Purim, which is in just 3 days, is supposed to be a happy one. In honor of Rabbi Lifsics, have a joyous Purim. It is what he would have wanted.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to share with you about the remarkable person that my grandfather was. He was not only an outstanding rabbi, but also a kind, positive, and smart person who always problem solved. His personality was inspirational and always left a long-lasting impression on those who knew him. I feel grateful to have him as my Zadie, and he always inspired me to be a better person. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I think just the attendance today with just the fact that I know it's right after a fast. It's just another thing that shows how much my father meant to the Chicago community and how beloved he was by everyone that knew him. I'm not a very good speaker and didn't have a lot of time to prepare, but I was thinking not a lot of people are. In fact, the only person that I knew, I was like, who would be good, and that's my father. He always knew what to say to bring comfort and just be this great source of compassion for so many people for so many years. Even after he, wound down his actual work as a chaplain, he still continued to just be a consoler of so many people. I was also just trying to think of what to focus on, but there's just so many things. And I echo my brother's thoughts that whenever anyone in Chicago who's been here a long time, it's, oh, who are you, Lifsics? Oh, Melvin, such a nice guy, such a nice guy. He was just always warm. He had a real sense of Avas Yisrael, like no one that I knew. That didn't matter what color, what kind of hat you wore, if you wore a hat, if you had a yarmulke, that didn't matter. He was just loved you. He was a Talmid Chacham. He grew up to a religious family in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I think one of his biggest traits was he always stood up for what's right, and he had this sense of justice, which I think all of us have in some sense. He passed down to his family that if something was right, he went for it. So he had an opportunity to he played the oboe. He was a great oboe player as a kid, and when he finished high school, he could have gone on a music scholarship, but he thought that was not his purpose, and so he went to Skokie Yeshiva, and I know many of you today probably were classmates of his, and just was beloved by so many people from that time period. He always was the most dedicated person that I know in doing the daf. It didn't matter whether he was at a wedding, he was traveling. He always had a Gemara with him. He was always chazering the daf, and I'm not sure how many times he made a siyam on Shas, but multiple. Tefillah, he was so dedicated to getting to minyan every day, 3 times a day, and not just on time, but early. That's just, he woke up early every morning. I know by COVID, before he moved into Park Plaza, it was such a difficult time for him because he couldn't go to minyan, and that was the hardest part for him. And going to Park Plaza, it was a real nechama for him that he was able to go to minyan 3 times a day. Beyond his public role, he was a devoted husband, a loving father, an incredible grandfather and great-grandfather, master of the dad joke. He was a candy man, and somebody told me that their son was they told their son that Rabbi Lifsics passed away, and he was in tears because the Winky Man he just couldn't. He was inconsolable to that, hearing that he passed away. I know what he was most proud of was his children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and he took such nachas from them and calling them and learning with them. I know he was very proud of that. And I hope his neshama finds rest in the Olam Hamas, and he continues to see nachas from future generations.
The dream come true for every Einikel, for every grandson, is to have the dream come true, Zaidi. The dream come true grandfather, who we could emulate, who we could look up to, who can carry on a Messiah of Zekenecha v'Yom Ruach. But what is a Zaidi? What is a grandfather? What is someone who we as grandchildren are proud of? Who is someone that we as grandchildren can look up to? And most of all, who is someone that we grandchildren are going to pass down to our children, of someone to emulate and someone to be like? To encapsulate Zaidi would take a lot of time, but I was thinking about the Mishnah in Avos. The Mishnah in Avos says, "Tz'u ru'u eizehi derech toiva sheyidbak boi ha'adam." What is that way that people should follow and that people should cling to? And the various different Tanaim suggest ayin toiva, leiv toiv, shachin toiv, chaver toiv, so many different things how you can follow in that way. And I think the greatest way to put Zaidi into two words would be a leiv toiv, an ayin toiv. My Rosh Hashiva said over that really the Tanaim are not arguing. Rabbi Yeshua, who says an ayin toiv, and Rabbi Lazar, who says a leiv toiv, it's all one. It's all really one thing, because someone like my Zaidi, who has an ayin toiva, who can see the good in every single situation, in every single person, in essence, has chaverim toivim, as we see here, has shchenim toivim, and it all stams, it all comes from a leiv toiv. The last words that he told me when I last spoke to him last week was, he started off with his cliche, Yaakov Meir, how are you? It was the biggest nachas, it was the greatest thing. I called him and he was able to speak to me. And someone with an ayin taiva like him kept looking forward, kept looking weiter to see what's going to be next, the Yom Tovim, the next time he gets to see us, the next time he gets to spend time with us when we come over to visit him, or a simcha. And I thought he was going to talk about Pesach and Shavuos. And he says, I can't wait to see you on Pesach, can't wait to see your kids, can't wait to see your brothers and all the other grandchildren. And then he says, I can't wait for Shavuos. And he says, I can't wait for Shlomo Zalman's Eifruf. And I can't wait to be Misamech by the Chasana. And I thought he was going to stop there. But no, my Zaidi, the man with the ayin toiva, continues on, and he says, I can't wait for Simchas Torah, when you're going to come to Park Plaza and you're going to dance, because this past year he wasn't able to come down, but he was so tzefrieden, he was so happy that we just came. This was his nachas, this was his pride, this is what made him happy. And his happiness he just shared with so many others, because he was so happy himself. And it didn't matter what the matziv was. Every single Shabbos by COVID, we used to walk from Pratt to Sherwin, and Zaidi and Bubby used to sit out on the front porch, and we used to schmooze for 45 minutes, an hour, about every single thing that's going on in our life. And it was COVID, and he couldn't see anybody, and he was quarantined. But no, Not unser Zaidi, he was not quarantined, he was out, he was giving, he was mechazik, he was mashpia. He so badly wanted to share in every single thing, and every single moment, and every single milestone that we achieved. Every achievement from all of his Einaklach, from all of his grandchildren, was his achievement. Every milestone, every accomplishment, whether it's a simcha, an upsharing, a bar mitzvah, a chasana, he was so besimcha, he was so happy. And it didn't make a difference what the matziv was. He was always so positive, always with such an ayin taiva, always coming from such a leiv taiv. I remember 19 years ago, 2005, little Yaakov Meir Pickles, second grader from Yeshivas Teferetz Tzvi and Rabbi Puchovitz's class. The highlight of our year was we were going to go down the block, down California, and we were going to go to the nursing home where Zaidi was the chaplain. And I, as a proud grandson, my Zaidi was going to call me up front, and I knew he was going to make the biggest matzav out of me, and we were all dressed up. And Zaidi got up in front of everyone, and he spoke about Purim, and he spoke about how it's so gishmak to have young children who are going to come and try to be misameach and give out coloring sheets. And then I was dressed as a gorilla. I was hiding in the back. I didn't want to get called up to the front. And Zaidi said, "Where's my grandson? Where's my Einikol?" And he spotted me out, and he called me in front of the entire crowd, and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is my grandson." And he beamed with pride and with nachas, and everyone just clapped and was elated for him because he was so proud, so proud of all of his grandchildren and all of the nachas that they gave him. And no matter what the matzav is, he was always with Bubby, always with Bubby, by Bubby's side, taking us to restaurants and just schmoozing with us, spending time with us. The Gemara says that an ayin toiva, someone who is a toiv ayin, someone who has a good eye, someone who has a positive outlook on life, he could bench, he could give bracha to other people by a zimun and by everything. And he, Keseder, always used to bench us every single Erev Yom Kippur and give us a varma bracha and go through the entire thing with such varmkeit. And it's no coincidence. I don't think it's by chance that the kvura is going to be on Purim. Purim, which is a day of such simcha, which we really couldn't see what was going to happen in the Purim story. We weren't able to see the hashgacha clearly, but still, it came out a tremendous nace. That was Zaidi. Zaidi was, even if he was quarantined, even if he wasn't able to make it to a simcha of one of his grandchildren, he was so besimcha, he was so happy. Just want to finish off saying that Zaidi should continue to set the bar. He has set the bar very, very high for all of his children and his grandchildren in being positive, in his learning. He was always learning. His greatest simcha was a siyum. Zaidi was always by the siyum. He was always there saying the Kaddish, giving us mazel tovs. He learned with Eulogy for quite some time over the phone b'chavrusa. And he should be a Melitz Yosher for Bubby, for all the children, and for all the Einaklach and the great-grandkids who we shept so much nachas from. U'mocha Hashem dim melech upon v'nei mar amen.
It's amazing, the Avas HaTorah in my shver head. A young man who was raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who came mamish by himself to Skokie Yeshiva. He steiged as a bacher in Skokie Yeshiva, went on to Kerem B'Yavne, and for all of his years considered himself, and he was, a Talmud of Rav Aaron. Soloveitchik, and a close one. That was his connection to Masorah. That was his Mesiras Nefesh to leave a small town, to leave his parents in the town where not too many kids went to yeshiva, let alone out of town. And from that point on, learning was his life. Whether it was Daf Yomi, whether it was by Rabbi Eichenstein in the Shir, every day in, day out, at home, chazering. When I first came into the house, when my wife and I first got married, I saw there were a few Art Scroll Gemaras. Okay, learn Gemara with Art Scroll. But then there were other Gemaras. There was something called Chavrusa, a sefer, a Nacha sefer to chazer over the daf, to chazer over his learning. And then Mesifta. And then there were another one or two, because it wasn't good enough the first pshat, the second pshat, the third time around. Maybe there's another way that I can understand this Gemara. Maybe I could see more depth. Maybe I could come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was his attitude. That was his Mesiras Nefesh and his devotion to Limud HaTorah. He loved learning. He loved learning for himself, and he loved to learn with others. The amount of time he spent with Yudah Leib over the phone, not learning Mishnayos, Bav Mitzia, and Brachos, and maybe some of the easier Masechtas, but Kachim, harder Mishnayos. And he worked on it, and they worked on it together, and this is what he looked forward to every day when he called to learn with another grandchild. Like Yosef and Israel said, also when I came into the family, anytime someone realized that I was his son-in-law, says, Rabbi Lifsics, such a special person, so caring, so kind, so dedicated to other people. Before caller ID, didn't know who was calling. But in certain homes, like my Shver and Shviger's home, when the phone rang at night, they knew who was calling, because most of those phone calls were asking for my Shver to come for Chevra Kedisha. Night after night, sometimes multiple times. He got me involved as well. That was part of his life. And so much of it was done b'tznius, in a quiet way, without fanfare. What he did for people in nursing homes, the number of nursing homes that he was a chaplain for, the number of people, the number of families that he had before you could store anything on a phone, that he had in his head, because these are the people that he was caring for. A Lev Tov is an understatement. His heart was enormous to hold the feelings of all of the people, all of the families that he cared for, all of the people in the nursing homes and their families. Most people think of Pesach as a time that's very busy, preparing, cleaning, shopping, getting ready for Pesach. My Shver was also very busy. I think it was at least 25 Siddharim bouncing from one nursing home to another, making sure that Yidden, who are sometimes so far removed from Yiddishkeit, but that they have a tam of Yiddishkeit, that they know that Pesach is coming and that Yetzias Mitzrayim is important. And it was multiple Siddharim, pre-Pesach Siddharim a day to make sure that these Yidden stayed connected and had a good feeling about Yiddishkeit because he cared about them. There's a kasha that's asked. It's brought down in the It's Yosef. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu start out Aseret HaDibros with the word Anochi? Simpler word to use would be Ani. Anochi is really a form of an Egyptian word, Anach. Why would that be the first word to be used in Aseret HaDibros? Based on the Medrash in Esther, when a husband and wife come from different countries and he speaks one language and she speaks another, someone has to give in. Either he's going to have to learn her language or she's going to have to learn his language. And the Medrash says he's got to learn her language. The husband has to accommodate to the wife's needs. And if there's a difference in the liking of food, she wants to eat one type of food and he wants to eat another, in that case, the wife gives deference to the husband. Achashverosh, says the Medrash, said, that's not happening by me. The food is going to stay that way. But the language, even though the derech ha'olam is that the husband should accommodate the wife and speak her language, lihiyos kol ish sorer beveso umedaber ki lashon amo, says the Medrash, amo, like his nation, not like her nation. And the people were upset. Hayitachen, Achashverosh, you're so cruel, you're not going to have some level of compromise? And people were upset with Achashverosh. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm taking Klal Yisrael as my nation. But they just came out of Mitzrayim. Their primary language is Egyptian, is Mitzri. And therefore I'm going to start the Aseret HaDibros, not with Ani, with Lashon HaKodesh in my language, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm going to start with their language. I'm going to start with Anochi, Anach, like what they're used to, because I'm going to accommodate somebody else in order to build a relationship. That is the caring. That is the feeling for other people that my shver had. And it had happened outside of the home, and it happened inside of the home, and it happened with everybody. As we just heard, just this week, 2 weeks ago, after a stroke, he called someone and said, I'm so sorry, I forgot to call you on Erev Shabbos. I had a stroke that day. As my shvigur said over and over today, he was a good man. He was a very good man. And he was a good husband, and he was a good father, and he was a good father-in-law, and a good Zaidi. And he was a good friend to all those who knew him. And he was dedicated to the Ribono Shel Olam in such a special way, in his Ben Adam L'Chavero and his Ben Adam L'Makom. The day he had the stroke, the reason why we were able to, HaKadosh Baruch Hu enabled the mishpacha to catch it when we did, was because even though Park Plaza davens at 7:30, he was in his seat before 7 o'clock, talis and tefillin, being maver sedra. Because davening was a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He took it seriously, and he passed that on to his children and his grandchildren. On behalf of the mishpacha, we ask you, mechila, for any time we were short, derelict in our kavod to you, when we were short in the way we treated you, and not giving you enough honor, and not acting in accordance with the way we should. On behalf of the mishpacha, I'm asking for mechila. I ask that you be a Melitz Yosher for the entire Chicago community, all your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, the entire mishpacha. Bila amavetz lanetzach, mocha Hashem Elokim dimo me'al kol panim. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsa, binos deshi abitzeni, al mei menuchotzi nahaleini, nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki eilech v'yetzal moves lo yirara ki ata imadi, shivtecho mishantecha, heima yenachamuni, ta'aroch lefon hashulchan, neged tzorerai, dishanta v'Hashem en roshi, kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed, yirdefuni kol yemei chayoi, v'shavti b'veis Adonai le'orech yamim. Everyone please rise for the Kilmale. El mole rachamim shochein b'amromim hamtzei menucha nechona al kanfei hashchina b'ma'alos kedoshim u'torim kezohar harakia mazirim es nishmas Rav Moshe Chaim ben Yerucham Fischel shehalach le'olamo בעבור שמשפחתו מספללים בעד אזכרת נשמתו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצור בצור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
This concludes the Levaya. The cruel will take place Sunday evening, approximately 6 o'clock at Eretz Chaim Cemetery in Beit Shemesh. We're going to update the Shiva times on our website once we get the information regarding when family members are coming back from Eretz Yisrael. Mrs. Lifsics is staying in Chicago. She'll start Shiva tomorrow morning at Park Plaza. The rest of the family is coming back Tuesday. And Mrs. Blisco is staying in Eretz Yisrael to Shiva. Again, that information will be on our website by Sunday or Monday morning when we get that information.